sky heavy with winter clouds. The air smelled of salt and pine, sharp and biting against the skin. Along the shore, smoke rose lazily from turf-roofed houses, twisting in the wind like grey ribbons. The village was just waking, yet one young man was already at the pier, staring out across the vast sea. Erik's hands were rough from work, his hair tied back with a leather cord, and his gaze was fixed on the horizon, as if it held a secret meant only for him. He had grown up listening to tales of raiding parties and distant lands, of treasures hidden beyond the edge of the world. The sea, his mother said, was in his blood. That night, everything changed. The seeress came to the village, her arrival as quiet and chilling as a raven's shadow. She was a frail, stooped figure, draped in furs, with white eyes that seemed to see straight through the soul. When she entered the longhouse, the entire settlement followed her, huddling around the central fire as if the flames might protect them from what she was about to say. "The gods have spoken," she began, her voice low and grave. "I saw a vision, the sails of our people stretching across the open sea, toward lands rich with glory but soaked in blood. Some among you will not return. Others will carve their names into the sagas for all eternity." Murmurs filled the longhouse. Some warriors nodded with fierce grins, hungry for the challenge. Others shifted uneasily, glancing at their families. Erik felt his heart pound in his chest. He knew in that moment that he would go. The following morning, the village was alive with preparation. Axes rang out as men split oak and pine for the keel of the ship. Children ran errands, carrying bundles of wool and rope. The smith's hammer clanged from dawn until dusk, shaping iron nails and spearheads. The air was filled with the smell of tar as the shipwrights sealed the hull with pitch. Erik worked beside his childhood friends, Leif and Sigrid. Leif was loud, quick to laugh, his hair as wild as the sea wind. Sigrid was serious and strong, her spear always nearby. Together, they watched the ship take shape. First, the long, graceful keel, then the curved ribs, rising like the bones of a great beast. When the full moon came, the ritual sacrifice was held. The entire village gathered at the shoreline, where a great white goat stood tethered to a stone altar. The goatee raised a ceremonial hammer and called upon Odin, Thor, and Njord to bless the voyage. When the goat's blood spilled across the stones, the sea breeze shifted suddenly, carrying the scent of salt and the promise of change. On the night before departure, Erik sat by the hearth with his mother. She handed him a small carved amulet of the Valknut, Odin's knot. "Wear this," she said softly. "It may not stop a sword, but it will remind you who you are." Erik squeezed it in his palm, feeling its rough edges. At dawn, the fleet was ready. 3 longships gleamed in the cold light, their dragon-headed prows painted with snarling faces to frighten spirits and enemies alike. Shields were lashed along the sides, forming a wall of wood and iron. The barrels of water, dried fish and mead were stowed carefully. The villagers gathered to watch as the warriors climbed aboard. Erik took his place near the bow, his fingers brushing the wood of the oar, his heart thundering. When the horn sounded, deep and resonant, the rowers pushed the ships from the shore. The longships slid into the water like hunting wolves. Sails unfurled, snapping in the wind, and soon the coastline was shrinking behind them. The sea stretched out ahead, endless and grey, and Erik felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. For several days, the journey was calm. The men rowed in shifts, singing old sea songs to keep time, their voices rising and falling with the waves. At night, they camped on rocky shores, roasting fish and sharing stories of what awaited them. Leif spoke of gold, Sigrid spoke of finding a new home, and Erik kept his thoughts to himself. But in his heart, he knew he sought more than plunder. He sought a place in the sagas. On the 5th day, the weather changed. The sky darkened, with clouds that rolled like black mountains. The sea grew restless, waves slamming against the hull. The helmsman shouted orders, his voice nearly lost in the wind. Then the storm struck. Rain lashed down in sheets, the wind howled like wolves, and lightning split the sky. The ship bucked and rolled, water crashing over the sides. Men clung to the oars, their muscles straining as they tried to keep the ship pointed into the waves. Somewhere in the darkness, Erik heard another ship's mast snap with a sickening crack. He gripped the gunwale, his knuckles white, as thunder boomed overhead. The seeress's words echoed in his mind. Only the brave shall carve their names into the saga of men. The night seemed endless, but at last the storm began to ease. The clouds thinned, revealing a pale grey dawn. The men were soaked, exhausted, but alive. One of the ships was gone, swallowed by the sea, and a heavy silence fell over the survivors. When the sun finally broke through the clouds, a shout went up from the lookout. Land. A dark line on the horizon, slowly growing clearer. Erik felt a surge of triumph as the ship turned toward it. Whatever awaited them, enemies, riches, death, it no longer mattered. They had survived the sea, and now their true journey was about to begin.